I first want to thank everybody or anybody. I know some people have watched some of these videos, and I really appreciate that. And again, yes, this is something that it's a creative outlet for me. Besides the work that I do, and I really need that and have needed that. But I'm also hopeful that these videos can help people that are going through any kind of health issues, chronic health issues, maybe raise some awareness. Um, and I'm also hopeful that possibly something can come from this in terms of some kind of collaborative effort. I mean, ultimately, I would love to turn my story of being chronically ill, going through chronic illness and healing from chronic illness, what I did, and then looking at healing. Um, Not only what I did to heal, what I then continue to do to maintain or continue to, I guess, improve in some ways, heal on other levels, but also looking at the the big kind of subject or area of healing and what that looks like, what that means, because of course there's different levels of healing, you know, psychological, emotional, physical. I'm not going to use the word spiritual here for the reason that I don't think we need spiritual healing. I think our spirit's fine. It's just it's this physical part that we struggle with, and I shouldn't have to say more about that. Just take a look at the world around you and what people are doing, and that should be enough. If anybody has any ideas or any requests for any videos on any health-related subject, throw it out there. Maybe I can help. So what I would like to talk about today is, I'm not sure if I have a subject necessarily, like a heading for it, but it's how much, and really this can lead to every one of these ideas can kind of branch off and lead to other ideas. But how much energy it takes to be sick. I don't think some people realize it. And there's more to this than that. But I remember story here. I remember when I was kind of in the throes of being sick. And I was living at home with my parents at the time. My sister was still young. I can't believe it was that many years ago. I was in my early 20s, or right around 20. And my sister and I would be laughing. And I would have a hard time laughing because I was in so much pain physically, like my muscles and tendons, like they would, not to be too graphic, but they would tear on if I exerted myself too much, and even laughing or sneezing or things like that were painful. I was basically in work, and so anyway, so to go along with that story, my sister would actually laugh about that. And it was funny. At the same time, it was awful. Looking back, to think about like that, I actually got through that I survived that quite literally. But yeah, I've always had, and obviously my sister does as well, have a good sense of humor. So there's that. But the other thing I was going to say is, here I am in my early 20s ish. And I was in worse shape than my grandmother, who was 85. So I sometimes joke with people and say, well, I've already been through old age. I'm not doing that again. And yet, like I said, being chronically ill takes up a lot of energy. So what can I say about that? Again, I think sometimes people don't realize how much of a struggle it is. And it's not only for the person going through it, but also family members. And that can be a whole, like I said earlier, that branches off into a whole nother subject that I'm not going to get into right now. But we only have so much energy. I sometimes on a simple level. I like to simplify things. I look at us like a battery, right? And we've only got so much energy. So if if a you know if a full battery is at 100%, then you have your daily life stuff, your work, your relationships, stress, just from daily kind of life. I don't know, that might take up 5%, it might take up 25%. It just depends on the individual. But if you've got kind of old psychological emotional wounds, trauma, well, that might take up 5%. It might take up 35%. It just depends. And then if you've got, well, chronic health issues, that might take up something. Do you have just minor fibromyalgia? Okay, well, so your pain levels maybe at a 2 or a 3. Well, that's okay, that's manageable, right? I mean, so that might take up 10%, maybe 15% on a bad day. But if it's worse, it might take up 30%, 40, 50, 60. So that doesn't leave you with a whole lot to work with at times. I remember people asking me, well, what do you do all day? And I'm like, what do you do all day? How do you do all day? Is the question. Like, how do you go to work and do all the things and have a family and like how is that even possible? Because I'm just basically getting through my day. That's how it was for me. Like I'd wake up, I'd be like, okay, how can I get from here to the end of the day, to when I have to go to sleep? Like I have to cook my meal, whatever that is, and that's a big chore in itself because you're trying to figure out what you can and you can't eat and how to cook it and all the things. Um, at the time, I mean, getting water was sometimes even a chore because um, now it's not. That's a little easier because water filters and all that are everywhere. So it's not as big of a deal. But all the things, washing your clothes, because there was a time I was so sensitive to detergents that I didn't know what soap to use. I mean, I couldn't use the washing machine at my parents' house because they used to use Tide, and I was sensitive to that smell, and so that got into the washing machine, which would then get into your clothes. So I'd be washing my clothes by hand in the bathtub, and it's just this ordeal. One thing I will say, which I've said in one of my previous videos, but not everybody's going to watch all the videos. I understand. Is unfortunately the labels, just like words we use, are important. And there's a lot of confusion around different labels when it comes to chronic health issues or illness. Some people would have categorized me with multiple chemical sensitivities or chemical sensitivities. Some people would have labeled me with myalgic encephalomyelitis because I became chronically ill after I had a virus in the late 80s. Which was called, or is still called, cytomegalovirus, right? Or CMV. CMV is in the same family as Epstein-Barr virus and herpes and all of those wonderful viruses. But it's really no different. I mean, it is different, but it's really no different than COVID. You've heard of long haulers, right? And people continuing in some cases to be sick from the COVID virus. It's the same thing. This isn't a new thing, right? So why are we calling it long haulers? Why aren't we calling it myalgic encephalomyelitis? Why don't we just stick to one bloody thing, right? Because it makes it confusing, not only for doctors that are like, I don't know what to do, like, but also patients, also us, dealing with these things. To make it even more confusing, and I don't know the reason why this happened, except people wanted um, power, control, money, I don't know, prestige. But there was a group of doctors, at least one of them was a psychiatrist, who changed the name of ME back years ago to chronic fatigue syndrome. And what a mess that was. And I'll tell you why just briefly. Because chronic fatigue syndrome doesn't sound very clinical, right? it doesn't sound like a real thing. Like, oh, you have chronic fatigue syndrome. Well, everybody gets tired, right? So it wasn't taken very seriously after that. Myalgic encephalomyelitis, or ME, that sounds serious, right? Oh my God, I've got ME. Oh my God, you poor thing. I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. Oh, come on. Um, so anyway, now I believe since then uh, it's done a turnaround back to, again, the label ME, or myalgic encephalomyelitis, but the harm's already been done, because for years no research was done on ME, because it was just kind of like, well, maybe this isn't such a big deal after all, or it isn't so severe. Meanwhile, people are struggling, um, and in some cases barely surviving on their own without any kind of help, and it's still happening now. Along with ME and some of the other labels I just threw out, we don't hear, and for some reason I'm not sure why, but there's other labels that have been used for the same thing, like multiple chemicals. I think I already said that. Multiple chemical sensitivities, environmental illness. That's the one I wanted to say. Environmental illness, clinical ecology is kind of the study of these different issues that are connected to the environment. I like the term environmental illness personally, because environmental illness to me covers a lot of different things, including chemicals, including viruses and bacteria, and heavy metals, and the foods we eat. And it's a term that, for me anyway, has always encompassed a lot of different things. So I personally like that. But here we are. So many years later, after I became well, after I started, helping others, after I continued to kind of pursue the complementary or integrative health field, we still haven't gotten very far when it comes to the medical field. And as I said in a previous video, part of it is also because I'm not going to say there's a conspiracy theory, but when you start talking about chemicals and the environment, you start stepping on big toes. The chemical industries, the oil and gas industries, they don't want to change. And so they don't want to admit that those kinds of chemicals can be a problem to people's health, even though we're starting to connect dots, like Monsanto and what is that stuff called, Roundup. People are realizing that, wait, chemicals aren't real good for us, right? I mean, ideally, we shouldn't have chemicals in our body. Um, Now we're realizing that they're in everybody's body, including plastics, right? Now they're starting to realize that microplastics are in our brains. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but here we are. So back to this idea of chronic illness, and 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 uh, and the toll it takes on an individual and their families. I will say that, and I've already said that a lot of medical doctors don't know what to do with patients with chronic illness. Unfortunately, rather than just say, I don't know what to do with you, or I don't know how to help you, obviously you're sick. They oftentimes, more so for women than for men, but they oftentimes want to label you with some kind of mental health diagnosis, like functional neurological disorder, FND, or conversion disorder. That's a great one, isn't it? Conversion disorder. Conversion from what? But anyway, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, everybody with any kind of illness probably has some kind of psychological and emotional issues as well that may or may not be related to that illness. Like anything, cancer, heart disease, because the body works as a whole system. But nobody that goes to their oncologist is going to be asked, well, I mean, I know you've got cancer, but tell me about your mother. Like, I think you really need to go see a counselor because, you know, that kind of, nobody's going to, no, they're not going to say that to someone with cancer, you know, yet, I was told things like that, maybe not as directly, maybe because I'm a guy, but I've had clients that were told things like that. For instance, clients that clearly had thyroid issues, you know, something called subclinical hypothyroidism. I know that's a mouthful. I'll say it again. Subclinical hypothyroidism, which means that you've got your thyroid's functioning at a low level for whatever reason, but your blood tests are normal, right? So your doctor looks at the blood work and says, well, you're fine. And you're like, I don't feel fine. My hair's falling out. I'm bloated. I'm constipated. Um, I've gained all this weight. I'm tired all the time. I've got brain fog. You know, well, you know, you probably should go see a counselor. And it's like, again, I'm not going to repeat myself, right? So that's just unfortunately where we are. I think the best story I have, or I had, was when a group of doctors at this, what's the word I'm looking for, renowned center in Montreal, gathered around my bed after I was there for 2 weeks and said to me, well, there's nothing in medicine that we know of that can help you at this time, but maybe in the future there will be something, or maybe there's some snake oil out there that can help you. They actually, or the one doctor actually said this to me. And the reason he said it to me was because he knew, or they knew, that I was looking into complementary treatments, that I was eating my own diet because I had already realized that certain foods made my symptoms worse. You know, I mean, it's not rocket science. Some of this stuff that people do when they're sick. You know, it's just like having a fever. You know, how everybody, we've all been there, right? We're all sick, we're all in bed, we all feel really bad. Imagine feeling like that on a regular basis, right? Well, when you're like that, what do? Well, you're not going to just go to work because you feel like hell, right? You're hurt all over, you're exhausted, you're tired. You want to stay at home and drink hot tea with honey and lemon. That may be a European remedy, but try it. I think it's a good thing. Little ginger as well. That's what you want to do, you know. But you don't want to go to work or you know, run around because you feel awful. So again, so just like with being chronically sick, it takes a toll on your overall energy. It takes a toll on every aspect of your life. I didn't even mention the finances. But during the time I was sick, I mean, obviously there was a financial burden on myself, on my family. I mean, I didn't have money. I had just barely graduated university. So I lived with my family for a period of time. I lived in Texas um, with a friend. I lived, you know, I was getting treatments at various places that my family helped support me with. I need to stop saying. And again, in my case, fortunately, the government also supported me with some of my major expenses here in Texas. So I was fortunate, very fortunate in many ways at the time. And I know that not everybody is able to get that support or gets that support. So being chronically ill financially is a big burden on the individual, on the family, on the community, on our whole system. So, I mean, again, that's a whole nother subject, but how does chronic illness affect our society? I have a client now that's been telling me that COVID and other illnesses are still out there, which we know, but are continuing to make people chronically ill, which isn't talked about much. And to be quite frank, they are quite concerned about what that will do to our society in the future and what that will look like. Well, yeah, I've known about this for a long time, again, because I became sick from myalgic encephalomyelitis, or environmental illness, whatever term we want to use. I'll stick with those two, back in 1988. So again, this is nothing new. And being chronically ill, yes, it affects every aspect of our life, and it affects, again, like I said, our families and the communities that we live in as well. So I think I've said enough for this video. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.